Okay. Hi, everybody. It's Rob Deptford, and in the picture frame next to me, that handsome fellow is Joseph L. Jones Jr. Hi, Joseph.
Hey, Rob. How we're looking today?
Hey, we're both looking pretty sharp, I think, today.
Hey, I'm following your example.
We're dressed for success, as they say. I think that's the term, right?
Absolutely.
So,
branding.
Right, branding. So actually, we're going to get into that. So this is Get Vocal on Video, and we want to have some discussions around some of the necessities of what is now our digital-first business era. And last show, we talked a little bit about jumping on video and talking about things yourself. And I think creating video is an effective part of the branding process for companies that are looking to move into the digital space. So let's take that up a notch and talk about what is branding. What is branding? And personal branding as part of that, because we hear that term a lot, I think, in the digital space as well. Branding, well, what is it to you?
Well, branding is one of those terms that's often thrown around. A lot of people really don't understand what it means. It kind of gets lumped into marketing and advertising. But I like to think of it this way. Marketing and advertising is more of the look at me, here I am, these are my products, services that I offer. Branding is more of the what. What is the experience that the customer is going to receive? What is it that I'm building an image of and embodying? And what is it that you can expect as a result of this particular logo, this particular brand, and how you can experience what's coming forth as a result of this brand?
I think you summed it up really well there. To me, it really is, it is an experience. To me, it's the reason people might buy your product or service. And it's not something that is sort of intrinsic in the business. It's something that takes some effort to build over time. And I think when companies, especially as they're starting out, and especially even if you're a mature company and you're just now moving into the digital space, you have to have an expectation that it is going to take some time to build out your brand and establish that brand reputation that you want. So really, it's how do you want to be known, I think, right?
Absolutely. In the industry, I guess they try to call that brand identity. And
Right.
The whole process of building a brand is really understanding, first of all and foremost, who you are and what your business is, what you want your business to represent. And then the branding comes forth as a result of an outgrowth of what it is that you want to build around. Then you market and advertise and draw attention to what has already been built and established from the branding process. So the branding comes first, and you can't establish the branding unless you first understand who you are, what you want your company to represent, and then you market that concept to the public. And then when they see the brand, they get an idea or an image of what it is that's going to come forward from that brand.
What do you think has changed over the years in branding?
Quite a bit. Quite a bit. A lot has changed, Rob, but a lot has stayed the same. For example, when you think of, let's say, Rolls-Royce, for example, first of all, when you hear the term Rolls-Royce, you know you're going to dig into your pocket a little bit deeper because there are many car dealers, but Rolls-Royce has a branding and they have established that they are a luxury car company. That's their brand, that's their model, that's what they've built. So you're going to have to pay a little bit more because you're going to get more quality. That's something that has remained over time. Nowadays, branding has shifted because there are so many other companies now in the marketplace. and there are so many more emerging companies coming to the marketplace. So everyone has a hand in the branding process, and there's so many products and services that are being put out there. Some of them are not really being branded. Some of them are just being marketed and advertised because the full development of the brand has not taken place yet. So I think what's different today is once upon a time, there was just a few standard, well-known brands. Now there is a plethora of brands over so many different businesses, industries, and now we have to really look at what is it that we're going to get when we engage in a particular brand, company, product, or service.
Yeah, I'm right with you. And I think, I think the consumer perspective has changed on brands as well, because there was certainly a time where, we know the big ones, right? The soft drinks and the cartoon characters and the athletic
Right,
footwear. There was a time where the approach was to invite the consumer to be a part of their brand.
right,
But I think that the tables have turned a little bit, where there has to be a little more convincing to the consumer, where you have the consumer has to have an opportunity to build some trust in the brand first.
right,
And I think that part of that, especially the opportunity in the digital space now, is that companies can get into this space and build personal brands alongside corporate brands. And Walt Disney was really good at this years ago. I go back to this example quite often, because he used to actually get on screen and introduce and talk a little bit about the process behind some of the Disney movies. And we would see him and hear him and know who Walt Disney was. And Disney actually went back to that process later on I think it was in the 90s, early 90s, when Michael Eisner took over the helm at Disney. And he started doing the same thing with Disney programming on television, doing a little segment introducing the program and talking about some of the Disney history. So we got to know the people behind the company. And I think a lot of corporations have kind of missed that.
right.
What do you see happening there?
Well, that's a great example because, as you know, I'm here in the land of Disney. So I
Yeah.
get a very clear example of their branding process. And really, when you look at Disney, they're second to none when it comes to branding and brand recognition, of course. So when you look at their example and what they've done with respect to that and how things are different now in the digital age, with Disney, it's a little bit different. With McDonald's and, like I mentioned, Rolls Royce and your soft drinks, it's a little bit different because it is a product that's handheld. In the digital age, it's more of a person or a company explaining, as Walt Disney did and many of the others did, what it is that is their brand, and then making the customer and the consumer aware of what they can expect from that brand. Now the emphasis is more on creating and establishing what that brand is in the mind of the public through digital sources. And we talk about getting vocal on video. Video is a huge resource that assists with that. One of the things that I looked at with respect to video and branding and all of this is when we look at YouTube, which is one of the largest vehicles that's used in terms of branding and videos and those types of things. Mm-hmm. YouTube was just established in 2005. That's 15 years ago. Now, for some of our younger audience, they'll say, oh, it's been around forever. But for many of us, who existed before YouTube, that's a relatively short period of time. So within that time, the whole branding process has up-leveled because more people have been allowed to get involved in that process and to create a brand and establish a relationship with the public. So that, I think, is where a lot of the difference is now.
So, it's relationship, and it's the know, like, and trust factor, right? And it is, I think, recognition. There's this element also of having to be distinctive, right, and stand out from your competitors. I think on the personal level, the personal branding level, there's a lot of opportunity that people are missing. And it is, especially in the digital space where we have tools like video and we can come here and have discussions like this, people can get to see us and hear us and get to feel a little bit like they know us, right? I call it the 6 o'clock news anchor effect. Where, for years we invited the same news anchor into our living room, and after a while you get to know and like and trust that person enough to really believe what they're telling us about what's happening in the world. And companies have this same opportunity to bring their people out in front of their customers in the digital space and start to establish that level of relationship where there can be some trust built.
Well, the trust is important. As you talk about in times past, we had those constant and consistent news anchors come into our homes, whether it was Walter Cronkite or Ted Koppel and many others, but they were a consistent few. Now you're dealing with multiplicity branding, where there's numerous different people coming into your living room, coming across your computer screen or the screen of your phone or iPad or tablet. And there's a lot of different branding images out there. So brand identity has taken on a whole new face. The other thing that is interesting about all of that is that trust factor, because people now have to look at what is it that they can trust from all of these individuals. Branding and that trust factor is established over a period of time. So it takes a while for people to really begin to see what it is that they connect with from a brand. And it takes them a while to understand what they're really experiencing from this brand. From the branding perspective side, we really have to look at and understand what is it that makes me different? Because there's a lot of noise, as we talk about often. There's a lot of people branding, there's a lot of products and services, and it's coming at us in rapid succession all day long. So we have to look at what is it that makes me different. And this goes back to the concept of building the brand first internally, so that we understand what it is that we want to brand and what is it that we want to put out to the public, and how do we want our image to be a model moving forward, so that it consistently establishes the concepts that we believe in and that our business is founded in.
Yeah. And that message needs to attract the right people.
Right.
Right.
There's two different ways to do that. One way is, you just throw a lot of stuff out there and see what sticks. And then there's laser marketing, advertising, and branding, where you're specifically speaking to your audience. So I like the laser perspective a lot better.
Yeah, I have to admit I do too. There are times where I've done the, throw the spaghetti at the wall for sure. But I do think that if you take some time to do a little bit of research and get that laser focus, your return on investment will be much better.
That's right. You have to identify who your audience is and who you're speaking to. Not everyone necessarily is going to be for you or connect with you, but you want to speak to those persons that are aligned with the business model, with the branding that you have established.
Yeah. Hey, so we were talking about dressing sharp here as we started off. And I was thinking about this because somebody has asked me before if I ever change my clothes. And I've got a lot of black shirts and jackets, right? And if you look back at some of my video content creation, I'm quite often wearing the black shirt and a jacket. And to me, that's part of this brand building process. For me, it is anyway. When I think about other examples out there, Mark Zuckerberg, for example, for years wore the hoodie at Facebook, right?
Mm-hmm.
For years, Steve Jobs was kind of a black shirt guy, right? When he was doing the presentations on stage for the new Apple products. There is some element, I think, of consistency that is beneficial when we show up in front of our audience. There are ways for people to recognize us, right?
Well, I call that the Matlock effect. I don't know if you've ever watched the show Matlock,
Yeah, I remember
but
Matlock, Andy Griffith, right? Years ago.
he always wore the silver or bluish colored jacket and the white shirt and the tie. And then one episode, they went into his closet, and that's all the blazers that he had in there. That's the whole suit. So people are known based on what they wear. In football, Bill Belichick is known as the hoodie. He always walks around with a hood on. Steve Jobs, Bill Gates is the one I'm thinking of. He rarely wore suits, but that was his thing, and that's what he was known for. So the way that we establish ourselves with what can be called a dress code is one way that we can connect with the public. And it's also one of those things that they come to expect to see when they see us. So yes, dress is important. Dressing for success is important. And dressing to connect with and align with the audience that we're talking to is important as well.
Yeah. And this ties into personal branding, right? I think personal branding, to me, personal branding is a bit of, a bit more of a common term, I guess, than what it was years ago. And I don't know if that's in relation to the rise of the digital space or not. But I think that really what it's about is positioning yourself in the market as somebody who is an authority in your field, as somebody who has a level of credibility, as somebody who eventually is known by name, and that name actually becomes a brand in itself, I think, right?
Right. Expert branding and specialty branding. You want to brand yourself as a specialist or expert in whatever field that you get involved in. That's part of the mastery. The key, though, is you want to make sure that you're actually the expert or the specialist in that field, or at least the expert in what it is that you do with your particular brand and your particular product. So that when the questions come back to you and you're actually dealing with the public, you have some substance to give them, and they know that they are dealing with a person who is authentic and not a person that's just putting on a show just so that they can market or advertise a product and make money off of them. Because there's a lot of that going on.
Yeah, you're not kidding. The endless infomercial that seems to be out there. Yeah, and I'm with you on this. And I think that's one reason that we have to be very careful about providing upfront value.
Right.
We're creating content and putting other communications out there on various platforms. That is, in effect, what helps establish our position as an expert in our field. When people get a taste of that knowledge that you have, that expertise that you have, over time, again, we're helping to build our brand, and we're helping to establish that level of trust in us, so that people have that understanding that, yes, we know one or two things about what we're talking about.
Yes, establishing that track record over time is essential, because there's nothing more important than a good name. And you want to have a good name personally, and you also want your business reputation to have a good name. So establishing that over time is essential. The other thing you want to keep in mind is the way that you start is the way that you want to finish. You want to have a consistency of doing things the right way from the very beginning. And customers will appreciate that. They will support you as a result of that. And that's the way that you really and rightly establish your brand in this age of multiplicity. No matter how many different products or services or platforms or stages you're appearing on, you want to make sure that you're establishing that standard of mastery, excellence, and consistency throughout the whole process of the business transaction that you're engaged in.
Consistency, I think, is definitely key.
Mm-hmm.
And I would just point out that consistency is not the same as frequency. I think people confuse that sometimes, right? They have this idea that they've got to be in front of their audience all the time. There's got to be this high volume of get in front of my target audience.
Right.
And I don't believe that's the case at all. I think consistency, whatever it is, really should be more of a quality focus. And if it's once a week or once a month, or whatever the intervals are that you decide is going to work for you, that's what it's about. It's quality over time. It's not this sort of constant, frequent get in front, and especially if you don't have a lot of value to deliver really frequently, right? It's better to have a high value and do it on an interval level that works for you.
I think the frequency speaks more to the marketing side and maybe the advertising side, and the consistency speaks more to the branding side, because you want to have consistency and establish a standard in your branding that lasts throughout time and is almost eternal as long as your business lasts. And you can frequently market that concept, but the consistency is on the branding and what it is that you're building. That's where you want the consistency to be. You want your consistency to be in your delivery of your product or your service, and the delivery of who you are, which is an extension of the products and the services that you offer. So that's where I see the consistency as. And then the branding and the advertising, you can do that as frequently as you feel you need to, but you want to be consistent in terms of the model that you've established.
Hey, as we wrap up here, what do you think is a good place for companies to start on the branding front? Let's say they're established, or maybe they're new, and one way or another, they're looking to get more established as they move into the digital space. What should companies do you think, as a start on the branding front?
Well, on the branding front, specifically with respect to the digital age, the most important thing now is you really have to connect with the now time consumer. The consumer nowadays is a consumer that is at present in the home. They have a little bit more time available. So you want to make sure that you cater your branding and your marketing to individuals who are at home and ready to receive something of value that's going to improve their life. The question that is often asked by clients and consumers is, what's in it for me? So you want to make sure that you answer that question within the first couple of seconds of your branding, your marketing, your advertising, however you're reaching them, because they want to know, what can I get out of this? How can this benefit me? And if they're not going to get it from you, they're going to go down the line and find somebody else, and there's so much noise and chatter out there, and they're going to be attracted to the greatest amount of it. So you want to make sure, again, back to the laser focus, you want to be laser focused on your core values that you're presenting, the core values of the way that your branding and your business has been established. And then you want to make sure that you market that to the customer where they are right now. That's important. You can't brand and market based on the 80s or the 90s or the early 2000s. You have to look at where the consumer is in their state of evolving and evolution, and how the market has evolved as well, and brand and market specifically to that client.
What's in it for me? I think that nails it. What's in it for me? That if we can answer that question, and if I would just add, get started, right? Because I think a lot of people have felt a little intimidated by the digital space. They have been maybe slow to transition, and now, as we've talked about before, we're in a position where we really have to take advantage of moving online, moving as much as we can in the business operations into the online space. So get started. Anything to add, Joseph?
Well, nothing more than now is the time. If not now, then never. Yeah. Because the train, as we say, has left the station. So if you're not on board with this internet and this digital marketing, getting vocal on video, then you and your business is going to be left behind, and you're going to become extinct and obsolete. So get involved, as you say. Get involved now, and begin with building your brand. Begin with first understanding who you are, what you want your company to represent, and sticking to their core.
Joseph L. Jones Jr. in Florida. I'm Rob Deptford in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And this is Get Vocal on Video. We'll see you in the next show.